What was that? I'll help you for a second. I think anybody who you need to, where are they? Yes, recognize. Just out of the, I don't see it. It's good. Nobody can read my lips. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. That's okay, you can finish up. No, I'm serious. It's the preamble to we're going to start in just a moment. So finish the conversations. So shalom, good evening. My name is Andrew Warren. On behalf of the Schaarai Zedek Brotherhood, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the annual Marx Speaker Series. It is great to be here in person. And I know that there are people joining us virtually. It's great that you're here virtually, but it's better to be here in person. Throughout COVID, we missed this connectivity that we had with each other, face-to-face conversations and hugs and handshakes and high fives and things that we used to take for granted. Think of the word kihila, the Jewish word about being together as a community. And that word, that belonging to a community, is an integral part of Judaism. In Jewish tradition, community participation is actually a religious commandment. Think about a minyan. We gather together in groups in order for basic rituals of prayer and celebration and mourning. And so I want to thank you for being here in person, vaccinated and masked, as mensches do, for the Marx Annual Speaker Series. Before we introduce our honored guests tonight, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge our dignitaries on the Bima, Michael Schein, president of the Brotherhood, of course, Rabbi Simon, Rabbi Weiss.
Rabbi Bernholtz, too.
Rabbi Bernholtz. Rabbi Emeritus. My apologies. I'm used to seeing you up here, Rabbi. And I'm going to introduce the moderator first tonight, Harry Cohen. Harry has dedicated his career to public service. As many of you know, he was the chief deputy clerk of the courts for more than 6 years. He spent 8 years on the city council. He's now the county commissioner representing District 1. And Harry's been on the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council and the board of the Straz and the Tampa Museum of Art and so many other organizations that it's hard to list. He is everywhere, he's beloved, and he's one of the sharpest political minds I've ever met. And after our mayor presents her vision for Tampa Bay, then Commissioner Cohen is going to moderate the Q&A portion of tonight's event. So, our guest speaker tonight needs no introduction. And that's not just a figure of speech. Mayor Castor is probably the best known person in Tampa Bay outside of Tom Brady, and I think she may even give Tom Brady a run for his money. She's a Tampa native, a Chamberlain High School graduate, a two-sport star at the University of Tampa, the police chief, and now, of course, our rock star mayor. She has shattered glass ceilings throughout her career as an openly gay woman. But I just want to share very quickly a side of Mayor Castor that some of you may not know. Back in June of 2019, Mayor Castor had recently been elected as mayor, and we were at the Tampa Bay Rays annual Pride Night event at Tropicana Field. And Mayor Castor was there, she was throwing out the first pitch that night. And there were a lot of elected officials there, and I happened to be with my then 8-year-old daughter, Elliot, who was with me. And Elliot's a softball player and a huge baseball fan, and she was on the field and we were throwing a ball around while we were waiting for the game to start and for the mayor to throw out the first pitch. And somehow it happened that Elliot ended up warming up with Mayor Castor. And when the time came for the mayor to actually take the mound with his huge audience and cameras on, she actually took Elliot with her up to the mound to throw at the first pitch. And now my wife jokes with me that my job as state attorney gives me 0 perks. She clearly forgets that I get to introduce the speakers here usually as one of the job perks, but having my strong, independent, baseball fanatic daughter be able to go up on the mound to throw at the first pitch with our strong, independent woman mayor, I'm not sure if that counts as a job perk, but it's one of the more memorable moments of Elliot's life, and it was an amazing memory for me, and it's a gesture that I'll never forget. So this may come as a shock, but there are some very big egos in politics. Our mayor is not one of them. She's as down to earth as she is driven. She's as warm and personable as she is successful. I'm proud to call her my mayor. I'm even prouder to call her my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Jane Castor.
I don't know if I should even speak after that. That was wonderful. And both of his daughters are wonderful, but Elliot is one of my little best friends. She's just great. And we were warming up at the game, and then there's a lot of pressure in that throwing out the first pitch. I mean, you can make a lot of bad decisions and do things inappropriately, according to public viewpoint, but boy, if you put that pitch in the dirt, your career is done. I remember when Dr. Fauci threw out the first pitch, and he winged it over to the side, and somebody said, "Man, he doesn't want anybody to catch anything, does he?" But actually, Elliot was out there to calm my nerves, and I did try to talk her into throwing the first pitch, but she wasn't going to have it. But a great young woman, and has a great father to emulate, without a doubt. So I am so excited to be here this evening. The rabbi and I were in the back having a discussion of when the last time that I was here, and it was when you first took over. So it's so great to see you relaxed in the back. You don't look nearly as stressed as the new rabbi. But it is a pleasure to be here, and for those that are joining us from home, it's nice to see you as well. Hopefully we'll all be back in person in very short order. But it is really the privilege of a lifetime for me to be involved in the growth of our city. It is really, Andrew talked about sort of my tract as a politician. I am probably the least political politician that you will ever come across, because I really never had any intentions of running for office. And really at the police department too, as you move up through the police organization, you get to do less and less what you came there to do, and that's out helping people each and every day. Or as my kids put it in the Great American Teach-In, my mom's not a real cop, she's just a chief. They said she doesn't put bad guys in jail, she just sits behind a desk. So a lot of respect on the home front. But really, the position that I'm in right now, the reason that it was of interest to me is because this city is going to change more in the next decade than it has in my 61 years here. And so to be a part of that, even a small part of that, is an honor of a lifetime. And we have a great team in the city. We have outstanding relationships all the way around. We did when I was at the police department with all of our local, state, and federal agencies, with the state attorney's office, with the public defender's office. It's very rare that you find the type of relationships that you find here in the Tampa Bay area. And now as the mayor, the same thing. You're not going to find a city council and a county commission that work very closely together, and then the public, private, everyone coming together to do what's best for our community. We're also very blessed to be living in the Tampa Bay region. Quite often I get called the mayor of Tampa Bay, which is okay with me. And I look at that as 3 cities, although the Tampa Bay region technically includes 7 counties. We look at Clearwater, St. Pete, and Tampa, and I'm not sure that there's another region in our country, much less nationwide, that has what we have here. If you look at the three cities, we have qualities, distinct qualities that are attractive around the world. Clearwater's got always on the most beautiful beaches list and great tourism opportunities, great opportunities in that city. St. Petersburg's got a great art scene, museums, restaurants, an eclectic downtown, and as I tell everybody, Tampa's got it all. So it really is a wonderful area, and when we market ourselves as a region, everyone wins. If St. Pete attracts a business, then quite often a lot of their team members live in Clearwater or Tampa or Hillsborough County. So, you know, it really is a great collaborative effort. And that is said nationwide, but I can tell you, and I know Andrew and Harry can as well, because we've lived it. People say it, but it's lip service quite often. It's not a reality, and it is here. So running for office, I wanted to focus on particular areas in our community. And I do bring the history of being with the police department and knowing every neighborhood in our community and knowing some of those neighborhoods that have been left behind in the past. So there were areas that I wanted to focus on that really brought the entire community not only together but lifted us up. One of the reasons that I'm so proud of our community is our diversity. And a lot of cities can say that they're very diverse, and they are. But it's rare to find a community where everyone lives together. We just received the information from the census, and while we haven't been able to fully unpack all of that data, for the city of Tampa, it indicates that there's only 2 neighborhoods in the entire city that have not increased in diversity over that 10-year period. And so I think we should all be very, very proud of that. And as we bring companies, organizations, as we bring them into this community, the number one word that's used to describe the Tampa Bay area is friendly. That people want to be here, and once they get here, they feel that sense of community and that sense of being welcomed. So that was one of our first focuses. You know, we say Tampa is open for business. We want everybody to move their businesses to the Tampa Bay area, to Hillsborough County, to Tampa. But, and I know I don't want to hear from the Taubes, but I know it's very difficult, or was very difficult, to go through our development process with the permitting and those types of things. So I said we did like a Wile E. Coyote and sort of threw a bag of dynamite in there and started over again. Brought together a number of developers, a number of just homeowners, subject matter experts, and city team members, and put a focus group together to basically redesign our development and economic opportunity organization. And so I'm very proud. There's, you know, we still have some slip-ups here and there, but I'm very proud of what we have been able to do in that particular area. And so we're continuing to focus on growing Tampa, but doing it in a very, very intentional way. And this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If you look in the past, or if you look around the country, there are cities and counties that will have a small geographic area, a lot come up, and they can build a high-rise. We literally are creating entire neighborhoods. If you look at the reimagining of West Shore and what's going on there, coming down to, I was just at Midtown last night for the unveiling of an art exhibit. They're already looking at Midtown 2, the second phase there. West Tampa, if you haven't been along Main Street lately, we've opened up the 5th tower, and that is all the way from market price to subsidized housing, and you have no idea who's living where. And I think that's critically important as well. So that is changing from an industrial into a residential area. The Rome Yard development that we're getting ready to break ground on, and then coming down to the river, and our dynamic urban core that Bob Buckhorn single-handedly created. He used to joke that the majority of the residents in downtown Tampa lived in the county jail that was down on Scott Street. And, you know, it is funny, but the sad part is it was really true. So now we really have that dynamic urban core that every city needs, every growing city needs. And then looking at what Jeff Vinnick has done over in Water Street. We had a presentation the other day. We had the State Secretary of DOT down here talking about the infrastructure money and the ways that we could use it here. And to see the before and after pictures, they had West Shore from the 1960s and then all the way up to today, and to see what has happened and what is going to continue to happen down there. And then also with Water Street, they had the aerial views. And, you know, when you live it and you see those buildings as they're progressing, you don't really get the impact of seeing the literal before and after. And so those are opening the residents. And even with Midtown, they had an expectation of renting somewhere between 25 and 50 units a month, and they've surpassed 70 a month each of the months that they've been open. Looking at Channelside, what that used to be next to the port, and now that's a dynamic neighborhood, urban neighborhood on its own. We had a walkthrough with Daryl Shaw last week on Gasworks and the reimagination of Ybor City, where he will maintain the history of that area, but it will come from the larger developments and just basically come down into the core of Ybor City so that we can maintain that history. And hopefully you'll hear the crack of some baseball bats down in that particular area as well. So Tampa Heights, I was joking last night with the developers of Midtown, and I said that every time you see one of these neighborhoods, you're like, man, I should have bought some property there. So I think that's a good statement too when you hear that all over the town. But again, we have to ensure that that growth is intentional and that we will be proud of the community that we hand off to the next generation. So the areas for focus for us went from the development services to customer-centric services, making sure that we're providing the services that you need and you really have grown so accustomed to that you don't notice. Every time you turn on your faucet, you put the recycling bin or trash bin out at the corner. All of those things that occur and are those services that are provided in such a stellar fashion that you take them for granted, and that's really what we want. We're building a new customer service center we had a piece of property that was just 11 acres that was just a abandoned warehouse, and we're building a new service center there. We'll be able to bring 9 different departments to one location in the city. It's going to be north of East Hillsborough Avenue at 30th Street. And so that will be a great location over in the South Seminole Heights, East Tampa area. We're going to break ground on that at the beginning of 2022 and expect it to be up and running by 2023. Gorgeous building, and we'll have a lot of community involvement in there too. So looking at the service provision, but then the 3 areas that I feel are really intertwined, and that is housing affordability. I said if we could, the need for housing, if it could remain constant, we could catch it. But it continues to rise each and every day as people discover our community and want to move their families and want to move their businesses here. But really it's the affordable housing. As we continue to be successful, those prices for housing and rent are gonna continue to escalate. So we're doing everything we can to provide workforce and affordable housing. Everything from purchasing property and putting that out for RFPs. We just put out 14 city lots to small women and minority-owned developers who've never done business with a city. So they're going to come in and build single-family residence on 14 lots, and they'll get that experience and that ability to work with the city, but also provide 14 new homes for individuals. Looking at everything from tiny homes to multi-home units in the hundreds all over the city of Tampa. But the workforce to make sure that individuals are able to live very closely to their jobs so they don't have to worry so much about transportation as well, and continue to ensure that our community is diverse. I have a friend who lives in Austin, Texas, African American. I went to visit him a couple of years ago. He said, what do you think the percentage of African American residents are in Austin? And I said, well, it's got to be 23, 24%. He said, no, it's 5. And I looked it up on the most accurate website you could look on, Wikipedia, and it said actually that it was 7%. So, in essence, they were pricing individuals out of their community. So we have to make sure that that doesn't happen in our city. So affordable housing is something that we are putting a great deal of effort towards. And the same way, each of these areas of focus, we brought together task forces, and they developed. Harry Cohen actually co-chaired each of those task forces along with Sonia Little, and they developed roadmaps for us in each of these areas. So affordable housing, workforce development at that city services center. We're going to we've added a facilities maintenance unit out there, and we're going to be able to teach future mechanics on how to work on vehicles. We also imagine a culinary school out there, and we're talking to several restaurant owners in the city about working with us on that endeavor as well. So workforce development, and that is everything from skilled labor all the way up to the most technical tech jobs that we have. If there were 100 software engineers that walk through the door right now, they'd have a job in the Tampa Bay area. Everyone needs a software engineer. But that's important too, that we make sure that our residents have those high-paying jobs that will allow them to live in the neighborhood that they want to be able to afford those rents and those mortgages. And then lastly is transportation. I often joke that mass transit in Tampa Bay area is more than 2 people in an SUV. And what people really mean when they say they support mass transit is they want everybody else off the road so they're not in their way when they're going where they're going. So that's an issue too. It's not just the provision of transit options, it's changing the culture. Because in the South, if you look at other northeastern communities, everybody rides the bus. Everybody avails themselves to the mass transit options. In the South, once you can afford a car, then you're getting off of the bus. People don't look at that as a viable form of transportation. So looking at all of the different transit options that we have, expanding the streetcar, looking at BRT, the possibility of CSX rail, using the scooters, electric bikes, that's going to be the next mode of transportation, electric bikes, but also ensuring that we do all of that safely. And we envision connecting Ybor City, the Gasworks area, Ybor City to Channelside, to Water Street, down to the Riverwalk, and then all the way over to West Shore, which will connect to the Courtney Campbell Causeway, and be able to connect the entire Tampa Bay area without ever having to get into a car. Now, that'll be a long bike ride unless you have an electric bike, but still imagining those ways that we can provide those transportation options that can take the cost of a car and the maintenance off of someone's budget plate, and again, they could use that for their residences. So I see those 3 as really being intertwined, and then the overarching is resiliency and sustainability, something that we are keenly focused on. I hired the first sustainability and resiliency officer in Whit Rimmer. Many of you may know him. He is nothing short of amazing, and I told him to not see himself as a one-man band, but to see that he has 4,700 team members, because every single decision and task that we make in the city is going to be woven through the lens of resiliency and sustainability. And not just as it applies to the environment, but as it applies to our neighborhoods as well. So that's critically important. So that's what we're looking at in the city, that we're focused on each and every day. I am a data person, and trust me, we have Excel spreadsheets on every single one of these roadmaps, and we are checking off as we we accomplish each of those recommended innovations or steps towards efficiency and effectiveness in those particular areas. We also have, if you go on our website, tampa.gov, you'll see Resilient Tampa. And that is the one task force working group that we put together that really is going to, it didn't have a definitive time frame. It did have a report, but it is a living working group, and they're meeting on a regular basis and looking at ways, again, that we can make Tampa a city of excellence when it comes to resiliency and sustainability. And that particular report, Resilient Tampa, is very robust because it has 58 initiatives in it, and I have absolutely no doubt that we are going to be able to accomplish each and every one of those by the end of this administration. So we are excited of everything that's happening here in Tampa Bay. I have to thank all of my predecessors. I often said when I was at the police department that we always had the right mayor for the right time. And I truly believe that with, Greco, Friedman, Greco, Iorio, Buckhorn, and I just hope that I can get even close to living up to the legacy of each and every one of those individuals. So it is a great time to be in our community. We are Tampa Bay. I was at an event last week, a dinner, and they actually had the Stanley Cup there, and I said to someone sitting next to me, I said, how sad is this? I said, people would probably die to have a picture with the Stanley Cup, and we're all like, been there. We've already had it. So hopefully we'll be able to repeat that with a Lombardi trophy and then eventually have a World Series trophy as well. So it really is a great time to be in Tampa. And those types of events, while they weren't the economic drivers that we wanted them to be because of the pandemic, they put us on the world stage. And everybody got to see what we know, and that is we have the privilege each and every day of living in the best community in the world. So I thank each and every one of you for what you do. It is not lost on me what is going on in our country and how much division and hatred there is. And while our community is described as being very friendly, and we are a very welcoming, loving, and cohesive community, don't think for a second that I don't know that those types of discriminatory acts, when you look at the individual in Wisconsin that's on trial right now, that those types of acts can happen here in our community. So we are always focused on safety and ensuring that everyone is welcome, everyone's viewpoint is respected. And so you have my assurance that I will always be here for our entire community and will continue to celebrate and protect our diversity here in the greatest city in the nation. So thank you all very, very much, and I think Harry's going to grill me now.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. I'm going to ask you some serious questions, but you mentioned your predecessors, and I know when you were chief of police, you worked very closely with Mayor Iorio and Mayor Buckhorn, and I wondered, because you saw the job close up, what surprised you about being the mayor? What has been different than what you expected? Here.
So maybe what we'll do, why don't you keep the lectern?
Yeah, and I'll stand up here.
I think he's going to ask hard questions. There's got to be some kind of scientific research that says the further away you are, the more difficult the questions get. People quite often say, what's the difference between being the police chief and the mayor? And I said, well, people tended to agree with me more when I had a gun on my hip. But I tell you one thing that was very beneficial for me being in the police department. I was the assistant chief of police for 5 years. So when I was named the chief of police, I thought, I've got this down. But when you get in that seat, the weight of that responsibility really is incredible. And so I had the benefit of knowing that going into the mayor's office. And then also the significance of having a very strong team around you. Because one of the things I learned as chief of police is that you had very little time to get down into the day-to-day activity of the organization, because the community owns you if you're the chief of police or you're the mayor. My kids won't go anywhere with me anymore. A trip to Publix or Walmart's like an hour and a half. And so that, having that knowledge before I went in was very helpful. It was nerve-wracking for our team because I wanted to ensure we had the best team in place possible. And so I took my time building that team, and that I think that probably resulted in a number of sleepless nights for our staff going, when are we doing this? When are we? I said, everybody take a deep breath. Once we get the team in place, we'll be moving forward. But I think that's probably the best lessons I learned. What surprised me the most were the politics of it. And I guess that shows how naive I am, but I can't tell you how many times I want to just raise my hand and go, here's an idea. How about we just do what's in the best interest of the community? And so, it's, for me, it's a little easier. Having been the police department, you get thick skin because nobody calls you to say, hey man, everything's great at my house, just one call and let you know. So you get there and you irritate half the people you're there, right? You make a decision who's right and wrong. So you're used to that, and so I kind of let a lot of the criticism. I knew during the pandemic, I don't pay attention to the social media, so I knew I was kind of getting my butt handed to me during the pandemic when people would text me and go, I don't think you're that big of a jerk after all. And I'm like, thanks. But it's sort of a freedom for me because I have no intention of running for any office after this. And, as police officer, I always said, or police chief, I always said, I simplified my life by doing the right thing for the right reason. And so just gather the information and make the decision that you feel is in the best interest of the community. But I tell you what, it's been an eye-opener, the political part of it, and how much time and effort you have to spend on that as opposed to just moving issues forward.
So back to, I don't know if this is working or not, but I'm pretty loud. So back to some issues. You acknowledged earlier in your talk that we are we're in a time with a lot of unrest in our society. And I know when you were chief of police, I remember you had a program where Tampa police officers went to the Holocaust Museum and actually learned about the Holocaust. It was part of their training. And I wanted to ask you specifically, because there's been such a rise in anti-Semitism in this country. What are your views on what is going on, and what are you looking at as the mayor as ways that we can sort of hopefully try to get things back on track a little bit?
Right. I don't know what the answers are for the entire country, because every day I'm just amazed that that there's that sort of degradation in civility and the ability to agree to disagree. So, as far as our nation, every day I'm like, okay, we're going to get back on track, and it just doesn't seem to happen. But really, prejudice, I feel, comes from a place of ignorance, and not a lack of intellect, just a lack of exposure. And that's one of the reasons that the police department, that we had to ensure our organization was very diverse and mirrored the community that we served. And then also the staff. I would argue that I had the most diverse staff of any chief, and I think I would argue mayor right now as well. But it's important because we're all a sum total of our life experiences, and you need to hear those experiences and those voices around the table when you're making decisions, especially when they affect the entire community. The Holocaust, I'd like to take credit for that, but I think many of you know I always say my best original ideas usually come from other people. And it was Chuck Ramsey, when he was in Washington, D.C., he was the chief, and he had his officers he got with the ADL and they developed a program where all of the officers would go and tour. And the point of it was every police officer took the same oath. They raised their hand and they took the same oath. But yet you saw police officers that willingly participated in the killing of Jews and others in Germany, and then you saw those that risked their lives to save people. And what's the difference when everybody took the same oath? And so the underlying point that's trying to be made is that you are in that position here in America to protect the Constitution, and you cannot let politics or bias or prejudice enter what you're doing each and every day. And then at the end of that segment, there's a talk about police and community and how they're viewed. And really it's just trying to bring the police and the community closer together. And of course, I signed up my CI, that's the confidential informant, and that was the bus driver that drove everybody over. I'm like, okay, what are all the officers saying? Like, come on. And he goes, okay, on the way over there to St. Pete, they're all complaining, I don't know why we have to do this. And he goes, and then on the way back, he said, first of all, it's amazing. It's a history lesson for the younger officers. And he goes, even the older officers, talking about the significance of what they saw in the Holocaust Museum. So it's been very, very beneficial. And now there's another program in DC with the African American Museum. And I know that currently there's an African American museum in St. Pete, and we're looking, Hillsborough County Commission's looking to build one here in Tampa as well. So I think those are lessons for all of us. But most importantly, in my view, at that time was for the police department, because it's our job to protect the community and uphold the standards and ensure acceptance of everyone.
You and I talk a lot about water because I'm on Tampa Bay Water, and you have some very, I think, very forward-thinking and aggressive ideas about how we can safeguard the water supply in the future. Mm-hmm. And I wondered if you just wanted to talk about that a little bit, because I think it's one of the most exciting things
Yes.
that you are doing, and it's not really on the tip of everyone's tongue all the time.
Right. It's so if you haven't watched it, I don't know if I should recommend it, but there's a documentary called Water Wars. Oh my goodness. And what's happened out in California. So I firmly believe that water will be the most precious resource worldwide in very short order. You already look at countries with droughts, even sections of our country. Gina Grimes told me the other day, she heard on a program that it hasn't rained in 4 years in wasn't Morocco, but it was a smaller country that relied on agriculture in large part. So the changes in our climate, one of them, and the continued increase in population is going to make water a much more precious resource each and every day. So currently, the city of Tampa we have Tampa Bay Water, basically the water consortium that provides water for the Tampa Bay area. Pinellas County doesn't have a water source, and so back in the 70s, early 80s, they put this together, and everyone sold their deep water wells to Tampa Bay Water, and Tampa Bay Water provides water to a number of communities, with the exception of Hillsborough County and the city of Tampa. Unless there's emergency drought situations, then we buy water from them on occasion. But we have a permit to pull 82 million gallons of water out of the Hillsborough River each and every day. That and the wastewater treatment plant are the two most fascinating tours I've been on. So you pull water out of the Hillsborough River. It's fascinating, and then it's treated through a number of different pools with mostly natural coagulants into drinking water. So then you can imagine that eventually comes out the other end. So we have the wastewater treatment plant out at the port, and we expel 50 million gallons a day of treated wastewater out into our bay. And the water's treated, nothing wrong with it, but it's expelled out into the bay. there are a number of different things that can be done with it. One is what they call the purple pipe, where it's used for irrigation, but that is very expensive. And in my humble opinion, nobody's going to be watering their lawn in a decade or so anyway. So we have a plan to save that 50 million gallons a day, pump it back out, transport it back out to the water treatment plant, that area, treat it to drinking water standards, and put that back down into the aquifer. And it will do a couple of things. One, it will stop the saltwater intrusion into our springs, mainly sulfur springs, and it will also drought-proof the entire area. We'll also put more water over the dam, which will ensure that we meet the minimum flow for the Hillsborough River, and will make the Hillsborough River healthier as well. And so that's been met with a great deal of political resistance, mainly with the phrase toilet to tap. Oh, you're drinking toilet water. No, we're treating water that comes out of the river right now. But this water is going to be put back down into the aquifer. The issue is that this plan, any solution that we endeavor upon to save that 50 million gallons of water is going to take 10 years at least. So we can't wait until we turn the faucet and nothing comes out to say, maybe we should do something about water. So that's the plan currently. We have it. We're working with SwiftMud, with Tampa Bay Water, and with our city council, and it's called Pure. And we'll replenish the aquifer, stop the saltwater intrusion into our springs, and then also drought-proof the region.
I think the thing that's so interesting about this is that, this is going to be the challenge long after you're out of office.
Yes.
And so it's such a forward-thinking thing that you're doing. I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to go to the audience. I do want to talk just for a minute about congestion generally, and the frustration that I hear about all the time, you probably hear about it all the time too, of just the sheer volume of traffic related to all of the growth that we're experiencing. Specifically, do you think that the infrastructure money that just is passing the federal government now, do you think the American Rescue Plan dollars that you've already received, do you think that these things are going to make a meaningful difference in terms of getting some infrastructure projects done so that we actually see some improvement in the way that people are moving around?
I do, but, as Pee Wee Herman said, there's always a big but. The transportation solutions, I always say, as a police officer, you get thrown a set of facts, you make a decision, you move off to the next issue. And Gene Duncan's so tired of me saying that for transportation, I say their mascot's not a snail, it's a dead snail. It's like transportation issues are, woof, they take forever. I mean, there's one study after another and one plan after another. I said, the only plan I don't see is the action plan. But a lot of things that we can do right away are, for example, focusing on the waterways. To be able to transport all of the contractors living in Apollo Beach over to MacDill Air Force Base via ferry. We're probably one of the few areas in the nation or the world that ignores water as a viable form of transit as well. So I think that's a solution that could be very quick, as in a couple of years. We do have to beef up our bus system. We have one of the most underfunded bus systems in the United States. Somebody the other day, after we met with the Secretary of FDOT, somebody was complaining about not having potholes filled or not having their roads fixed or not having transit solutions, a reporter, and somebody asked him if they had Commissioner White's cell phone number to call him and thank him for getting the penny sales tax we all voted for knocked down. But those solutions take a long time. We do need to focus somewhat on roadways, but it's too late for that. We have to focus on ensuring that we have those mass transit solutions. And a lot of areas throughout the world, parking garage, they're just erasing that phrase from any of their developments or they're trying to construct parking structures that can be turned into either retail or residential as well. because the thought that there's not going to be any need for that. I've had twice, I'm sure you have too, had the presentations on air taxis, and they're very excited about coming to Florida just by virtue of being able to connect Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami. And I said, how much does it cost? And they go, oh, not much more than a taxi ride. And I'm like, okay, add that up for 4 people to Miami. That's a lot of money. But, those kind of things I think are going to come very quick with technology. I think the next big transportation option is going to be the e-bikes. I think those are going to really take off. But then you have to look at the number of, we're a Vision Zero city, which imagines 0 deaths and serious injuries from traffic crashes. And I said, maybe we should start it at Vision 100 because you would think in the pandemic that traffic fatalities would go down. They've exploded. So those types of different approaches, we need to look at. We need to stop looking at everyone driving their own car to whatever location they want to go to. And then you look at all of these ordering services, just because you're not going anywhere in your car, the fact that Amazon delivery person comes to my house several times a day. I told my partner, Ann, I go, when you know everybody on a first name basis and they're bringing you Christmas presents, I go, that's not a good look.
So, Michael, I'm going to ask you to help us if there are audience questions. If people raise their hands, we will give you the microphone. I see one over there. I'll come over here.
I really enjoy seeing the young people on all their scooters and bicycles and things, but I also noticed that there are so many scooters laying all over the place. I mean, we live on Harbor Island, and just to get from Harbor Island to Riverwalk, you have to get the scooters out of your way. They're laying all over the sidewalks, and it's a cool thing. I mean, they're a great thing to have, but what can we do about the scooters that are just laying all over the place?
You have just identified one of my pet peeves, and we've fixed that. I'm an order maintenance kind of person, but we fixed that now. We had a couple so we're still in the pilot program. We have 4 vendors, well, 3 now, that are supplying those scooters. But now they'll have to put them back into a charging station before it stops charging for the scooters. So they're going to have to go back into bays that have been identified around the city. But, and they can't be they can't be ridden on Bayshore, the Riverwalk, 7th Avenue. So what they do, some of them they shut off, others they just slow down. So then the young kids think they're broken and they chuck them in the river. So we have to go get them out of there every once in a while too. But those are, and people use those. It's not just at night. You see people riding them to work every day. And so that, I think the electric bikes though, people will be able to buy an electric bike and then they won't have to subscribe to the service of the scooters and so forth.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate all of your visions that you've expressed and what's being done about it. And I wanted to say that I've lived in Tampa 32 years now, and I drive along Bayshore Boulevard, and it kills me every time I see all of the water from the sprinkler systems that is being wasted. And I know that the same amount of time there have been the drip system in Israel, and you don't waste it in the air and onto the streets. So that there are ways to improve that, something like that for water. And then we have so much sun. Why aren't we also going to solar and wind power that other countries have been doing for a while? And I would hope that that would be added to your long list.
There you go. And that, so it's almost like you were a plant. The purple pipes I talked about before, I don't know which mayor, Harry, you probably had a part in that, but the majority of the homes along Bayshore have that, and it is the surface water discharge. It's the water from the wastewater plant that's being utilized, but we pay, I just saw it the other day, and I told them I wanted the data to see what their activity was. But we pay about $500,000 a year to a contractor to go and check on individuals that aren't, are watering their lawn in days that aren't theirs or time frames. So we are very conservative in those areas. Actually, I passed, along with City Council, the largest infrastructure water wastewater plan in the nation's history, $3 billion. And the majority of water loss that we have is through leaky city pipes. And that's fascinating. I'll just tell you real quick on this because it is fascinating. So the water pipes, we respond to millions of dollars in breaks in water pipes every year. A lot of them are 80 to 100 years old. So the wastewater, what they do is they put a sleeve in the wastewater, and they put it in, and then they put pressurized hot water, and it expands the sleeve through the pipe, and then they allow it to cure, and then they can put a little robot in there that can tell where the access to the homes is at, and they'll cut the access for homes. So I just think that's fascinating. But that's one way we're looking at the conservation of water. But also with the solar energy, actually any type of energy that that we can conserve and sort of lighten our carbon footprint. We have the waste to energy plant that actually develops the CS, the gas, and we use that for our trucks. We're getting ready to move all of our solid waste off of the Spruce lot and move them out right next to the solid waste plant, and we'll be able to power all of our garbage trucks off of the waste to energy plant. And then we just announced last week in a partnership with TICO, something that even when I was running, I'm like, you sit up in a building and you look down at the convention center and it's just a wide open area for solar panels. So we're putting those up there with, in partnership with TICO and USF. We're also putting solar panels on the top of the new city services building, but that's very expensive as well. It's added millions of dollars to the cost, but still, you'll get the return eventually.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
thank you very much for your talk. Very creative, innovative things you're doing. I'm a member of the Economics Club of Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
And every week I hear of another innovation downtown. The latest being the expansion of Riverwalk and other things like that. On the other hand, it's very difficult to get downtown, either through automobile or through mass transportation. So we end up going downtown very, very reluctantly.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you're trying to do a bunch of things, but I would say to you, speed up doing some.
Maybe you could come to our next staff meeting with me. So that is our number one initiative, is to expand our streetcar. And since it's free, the ridership has expanded dramatically from Ybor City to downtown, and people are actually using it as a mode of transportation. They can park much more cheaply and easily in Ybor City and ride that down to work or down to whatever they want to go to, restaurants, retail. So we want to take it all the way down Tampa Street and back up Florida, circle around, and then do bus rapid transit going into East Tampa along Palm, and then coming along Cypress out to West Shore and then out to the airport. And we actually had an unsolicited proposal for that project. So we are looking at those, but as I said, it takes a long time to get any of the transit projects up and moving.
We are going to take two more questions. The first one is back here.
Where are we in terms of the three communities getting together to build a road from Tampa all the way to the beach? It's a huge problem now. It's a huge tourist area. You just can't get from one community to another easily.
Right, and we have the roadways and the Gandy flyover, there's a lot of concern about the growth south of Gandy and the traffic that brought to Gandy Boulevard. But with the opening of the flyover, that's reduced the traffic on Gandy by 50%. And so when it first opened, our city attorney, Gina Grimes, left from the office. She lives in Paso Grill, and she said the first light she had to stop at was at Don Cesar. So she was very happy customer. But, again, providing the bus rapid transit, there is a plan to go along 275 all the way up from Pasco County, all the way down into Pinellas County, St. Pete, Clearwater, over to the beaches. Also, excuse me, Brightline is still planning to move forward with the Disney to Tampa, and that will be probably a 20, 30-minute ride at most. People ask you now, how long does it take to get to Orlando? What's your answer? It depends. It's like it can be an hour, it can be 4 hours, and there's no reason. But I hear you on that. We have beautiful beaches, and they should be much easier to access. But I think if we can connect also all of the theme parks in the Orlando area to our beautiful beaches, that'll be a win-win all the way around. All right, are we all done?
Mayor?
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Mayor Castor,
Yes.
thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate it. I have a question related to the water issue, but a little bit different. From the other end of it, from the bay end of it, and our erosion situation that's coming. And I'm wondering if the city and county are working together in trying to solve that erosion problem.
We are working together. We're not going to stop sea level rise, but we are looking at a lot of our zoning and ordinances and so forth. I live on the river, and I've been there for over 20 years down right off of Sly, and I have never paid flood insurance because I said if my house floods, the dam's broke, all hell's broke loose. But I just got a notice that I need to buy flood insurance. But so if anybody could help me out with that, I'd certainly appreciate it. But that's a real concern. We're even looking at with all of our stormwater projects, like a valve as well, that as the stormwater goes out, that the valve closes so that the rising waters can't come back into it. But another thing that I just went on with a number of environmentalists, most focus on the water, was over off of the Skyway Bridge in the Hillsborough Bay. There's an oyster farm, and they actually sell their oysters at Burns Restaurant. It's 4 acres, and one oyster can filter 50 gallons of water a day. And so that was cute. It was a husband-wife couple who had given up their practices and gone into oyster farming, and they joked that their volunteers never came back for the second day. It's a lot of hard work to do that, but you can actually look on Google Maps and you can see that where those 4 acres are, the clarity of that particular area as compared to the rest of it. It's remarkable. You can, if you live on the water, on salt water, mine's brackish, if you live on salt water, the environmental protection will give you a net of oysters that you can put under your dock or wherever you can hang into the water. I said, well, I've never heard of that. So a lot of programs that we're looking at to keep the bay clean, but then also to ensure that we're prepared for sea level rise. All right. Well, thank you all very, very much. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Mayor Castor, for sharing your vision of Tampa. I'm sorry you're going to have to buy flood insurance. I know. And thank you, Commissioner Cohen for moderating tonight and all that you do for our Jewish community, our city, and our county. Appreciate it. Good evening. I'm Michael Shine, and I'm the Schaarai Zedek Brotherhood President. On behalf of the Brotherhood Board, I would like to welcome all of our members, newcomers, guests, and streamers to Congregation Schaarai Zedek. We would also like to recognize our active military and veterans tonight, and thank you for your service. We look forward to visiting with y'all in a few minutes during our first reception under the stars on the East Lawn. We have a new tent. It's a little bit larger than the social hall, so there's plenty of room to enjoy our hopefully wonderful Florida weather. At Congregation Schaarai Zedek, we pride ourselves on offering a variety of programs, and our Brotherhood does the same. Please mark your calendars for our Brotherhood Annual Deli Night, which will be Saturday, March 12th. This fun night is for the entire family and sells out year after year. We will partner with Temple for Hanukkah under the stars in the same tent, right, Rabbi? Yes. Okay. Thursday, December 2nd, you'll have dreidels, drinks, and dinner. Say that 3 times. This year, Brotherhood will partner also with the annual Christmas Day Mitzvah Dinner for the underserved. Giving and volunteer opportunities for the whole family are available, so please watch for details in your email. Thank you to Brotherhood members Anthony Weiss, David Rosenbach, Andrew Warren, and Harry Cohen for putting together this year's Steve Marx Speaker Series program featuring Mayor Castor. The Brotherhood wishes to also thank Merrill Marx for continuing to co-sponsor this speaker series named for her husband. Steve was a mentor to people all across the country, inspiring them to think critically. Many did not know they needed a mentor until they met Steve. Merrill, I think of Steve every time I start to do a document on the computer, choosing veranda font. Why? Because Steve told me people would no longer think my words had any meaning if I continued to use my favorite font, Comic Sans. I'm looking at veranda font right now. Steve Marx gave his time and insight to the temple and our Brotherhood. He inspired each of us in the Brotherhood to be better. To show our thanks for all he did, we named this annual program the Steve Marx Speaker Series. We thank Jane Castor, former Chief Castor, and Mayor Castor for all she does for our city. A few years ago at the University of Tampa, she was noticed as a leader on the first women's volleyball team. Simultaneously, on UT's basketball team, she garnered the spotlight shooting over 1,000 points and over 500 rebounds. 1,055, correct? And 5,055 and 508 rebounds. 40 years later, she ranks as one of 4 women to achieve this feat at UT. If you'll check her famous site, Wikipedia, under NCAA, you will also find that achieving 1,000 is a major accomplishment in the 4 years of anybody's college career. During 31 years at Tampa Police Department, she worked her way up from a rookie cop to chief. She held the respect of so many on the force because she had experienced what almost every officer did. Her last 6 years as Chief Castor made her the first woman to hold this rank. She is the 3rd woman to be elected mayor of Tampa, but proudly the first member of the LGBTQ+ community. Through all her public achievements, Mayor Castor displays strength, toughness, calm, and wit. In recognition for all you do for us in Tampa and for being here tonight, our Brotherhood authorized a $500 donation to the Tampa Jewish Family Services Food Bank in your name. We hope this makes a few more happy Thanksgivings for deserving Tampa families. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Harry, Andrew, Mayor Castor. Usually when someone stands at this lectern, we're leading prayer. I think Steve enjoyed services. He definitely enjoyed programs like this one a little bit more. Someone who leads prayer in the Jewish community is called a shaliach tzibur, a messenger of the community, someone doing something for the community that not everyone in the community is able to do. And as I think about the politicians, the community leaders who we have present with us this evening, those you represent, so many of whom have come out of this congregation and so many of whom have led this community proudly. We really have had shlichei tzibur, people who have been messengers of this community, doing that which not all of us can do. And when someone is leading our community in prayer, Cantor Canizaro at the beginning of our Rosh Hashanah services stands at the ark and says the word hineni, here I am, being present for that community, even as you try to do that which God desires of you for yourself. And that's something that all of you do. And as we commemorate Veterans Day today, to be a shaliach tzibur, someone who does something for the community that we're not all capable of doing, and someone who says hineni, who says, here I am to do that which needs to be done. We definitely honor our veterans and active service people tonight as well. So if there is anyone who is a veteran of the armed forces or currently active service, if you could rise at this time. Stay up, stay up, stay up, stay up. And I think it's okay. I'm going to ask our officials to rise as well as those who serve our community. And yeah. And I've been asked to end this evening with a blessing for all of you. And for our veterans, this doesn't get you out of coming back tomorrow night when we're offering a blessing during our service as well. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, may God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka, may God's light shine upon you and may God be gracious unto you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom, may God's face be lifted up to each of you, as each of you have been lifted up to a place of seeing that which our community needs. Perhaps putting your life at risk to protect us or to protect our allies, or giving up so much of your time in order to do that which you felt was right for your neighbors, for your family, and for your friends. To be those who serve the community is to be a blessing for our community. We are grateful for the blessings that you've given to us, as we pray that your life is filled with blessings as well, leading us all, we pray, to a world that much closer to a time of peace, as we say, Amen. And my even more important job is saying that you can go eat under the tent. Thank you so much.